you see the ONS data that came out a couple of weeks ago that said for the first time ever since records began, 50.1% of women are childless by 30? So there are more women without children at 30 than there are women with children. The first time ever.
Well, so this is somebody clipped a part of one of my podcasts, I believe it was, where I was talking about what our society does to 19-year-old women or 18-year-old women, 19-year-old women. We just lie to them all the time. You know, the first lie is there's nothing more important than your career, more or less by definition. So that's the first lie. The second lie is there will be nothing more important to you in your life than your career. So that's the second lie. And then the third lie is there should be nothing more important in your life than your career. So that's the third lie. And then implicit in that is the idea that children are a burden, and that the idea that women should have children is part of the oppressive patriarchy and should be resisted.
Nail on the head. Jordan Peterson to me is one of the brightest minds that I personally know. Brightest, sharpest, whatever you want to call it. And that's a great point. You know, I feel like a lot of women, again, this is my humble opinion, they feel as if a career is going to make their life feel fulfilling. You know, I feel like it's a situation where you go after something in the name of security, but you realize that at the end of the day, it's not something that you really want. Not to say that, you know, women don't want to be successful, they don't want a career, but at the end of the day, what makes you the most joyful? You know, not to say every woman wants a child and every woman will want a child, but in general, as a general statement, most women do want children, you know? And when society tells you that what's most important is your career, and by the time you get your career, you're 35 and the clock is against you, you've locked in your answer, you know? And society doesn't tell you that you're on the timer and reminds you that, hey, yeah, while you're chasing this career, please remember that your clock is still going. It's not like you can have the cake and eat it too sometimes. Well, you can, but how much of that other pie are you sacrificing, if my dessert analogies makes any sense to you? I believe there's a little bit too much emphasis placed on a career nowadays and not enough placed on the family. There aren't enough people saying family first, because that's where true happiness comes from. The people you come home to is what makes you happy, not the job you leave for.
And who are men to tell me what I can do with my body? And hey, fair enough, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I've worked in female-dominated occupations my entire life. For example, I worked as a daycare worker way back when that was like 1980, something like that. And there were no men doing that, but I really liked kids, and so that was fun. And I worked for social services in Alberta in the child care department, and then I've been working as a psychologist, either training or as a psychologist since then, and that's been a female-dominated enterprise increasingly as the years went by. But even when I first entered it, so I'm in the post-female in the workplace generation firmly. I never experienced the world except as that, and so I've watched women progress through their professional careers at every level of attainment, from the lowest to the highest, and observed what happened, and relatively, I would say, bias-free, because I didn't know. And what I've seen is that as women progress towards their late 20s, there's a psychological transformation, and what happens is that they place less emphasis on their career and way more emphasis particularly on having a child. And that really reaches a crisis point around 29 or 30 for the vast majority of women, and their attitude flips. And I've seen it flip very dramatically with many women. And I suppose...
But society will tell you it's the way you're conditioned. Society will tell you It's not what you want, it's what culture tells you you want. It's because when you look at other women with kids, you don't think that that's what you naturally want. You think that's what you're supposed to. Stop. You ever heard about your intuition? I feel like feelings like that is an extension of that intuition. If something scratches at the back of your mind, it's because you should pay attention. Deep thoughts into it, not just write it off as culture, the patriarchy, the whatever else that's going around nowadays. It should be something that you give your attention to and pay attention to it very keenly. And ask yourself questions, to tell yourself that at the end of the day, nope, society is the reason why I want kids. You're sure giving society a lot of power over your own mind and thoughts, as if you're not your own individual and your own person.
The most single most uh, convincing evidence of that. I worked with high-end lawyers in Toronto for about 10 years. I was part of an organization. We went to law firms, high-end law firms, and said, send us your most productive people, and we'll help them iron out whatever wrinkles there might still be in their life. And the advantage to them is that things will go better for them, and the advantage to you is they'll be even more productive. And there's a good management dictum, which is pay the most attention to your most productive people because they're bringing in the bulk of your revenue disproportionately. And so I worked with men and women who were at the peak of their careers in a very difficult enterprise. And so these were women who were generally very attractive, well put together physically, pretty stable psychologically, extremely conscientious, very, very smart, and high achieving from like junior high all the way through high school, university, law school, onto the top firms, rocketing up through the ranks, full partnership by the time they were 29 or 30. And all the law firms, all the women bailed out, all of them. The law firms couldn't keep them. And I was really, and I talked to the women a lot about this because I was very interested in it, because I knew the law firms were bending themselves over backwards and tying themselves into knots trying to retain these women, because why wouldn't they? Just being greedy capitalists is enough. They don't want to lose their high performing women because they're performing at the highest level, and they couldn't keep them. The women wanted to have 9-to-5 jobs. They wanted to bind the job so they could have a life. And that was especially true once they got interested in having a child or had one. And what they really came to was a very interesting realization. So because they were highly conscientious women, they sort of did their duty and worked hard and diligently and didn't pop their head up to ask questions. They were in junior high, they got the best grades. They were in high school, they got the best grades, and so on, all the way through, right till they reached partnership. But that's sort of an apogee, right? You hit partnership in a senior law firm, it's like you're at the top of your profession. Well, then what? Well, so then they looked around and they thought, here I am with all these like hyper competitive men, perfectly willing to work 80 hours a week nonstop to stay at the top. What the hell are they?
Do you see the
Yeah. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to share that with you. Again, my whole thing is like you just said, society's gonna tell you that, yeah, you don't want it because that's what your body wants. You don't want it because that's what makes you truly happy and fulfills you. And I don't believe that's the case. You know, I believe the reason why you want it is because it will truly make you happy. I heard something interesting before. At the I forgot who I heard it from, but it goes a little bit like this. At the end of your life, what are you going to be most proud of? The plaque on your wall or the kids and grandkids gathered around you? I guess that's a question for men and women to answer, right? Let's be real. Guys, I appreciate you kicking it with me in this video. I wanted to share this. These are the things I'm interested in, and I hope you come along for the journey. I'll see you in the next one, all right? Peace.